Good afternoon and welcome to Time Out, your program of informative interviews with persons of note, persons with fascinating careers, leaders of today and tomorrow, and others who will allow you to invest an hour and receive a guaranteed valuable return. So stay tuned. This is Bill Hendrickson, your host of Time Out. It is 5:01 p.m. in kind of a cloudy and possibly rainy Carborough, North Carolina, and it's hot. So anyway, I'm sitting here looking across the table at three handsome people, and they're going to take over the show pretty soon. We're talking with the family that is the management organization of Straight Talk Support Group, and you're going to find all about what these folks do. You're going to hear from Bessie Elmore, the founder. You're going to hear from her daughter, Cheryl McDonald, and from her son, William Elmore, who is recently come from another part of the world, but he's here today. And you guys are really welcome. And I want to thank you all for taking the time to come today. This is kind of an evolution, your organization, and how it all started. But first, before the real start of Straight Talk Support Group, a little bit about you, Bessie, who you were and how you got where you are.
Well, thank you, Bill. Thank you for having me and having Cheryl, William, and I today. Who I am and how I got started. Well, I came to North Carolina 25 years ago with all intentions not to stay.
Oh, okay.
I just came here because my son had come here to go to college and ended up going to prison. So my thoughts were, okay, after the trial, he was arrested and spent a year in Wake County Jail. And after the trial, he was found guilty and sentenced to life, natural life in prison. But at that time of the sentencing, I did not hear the natural life part. So my daughter and I were there at the trial. The trial lasted 3 days.
Trial was in Raleigh?
In Raleigh, yes. And I decided, well, I'll just come back to North Carolina and get all of this cleared up and get on back to my life.
Where were you from?
I had originally from New Jersey, but I had moved to Stone Mountain, Georgia to live my life.
Oh, okay.
So I decided to come back to North Carolina, like I said, and clear this mess up, get him out, and go on back to living my life.
Boy, there's a mother talking.
But it didn't happen that way. Not exactly.
Uh-huh.
But I came to North Carolina not knowing anyone here. I didn't have any family. I ended up getting 2 jobs. One was a counselor at a battered women's shelter in Durham, and working for a gentleman who owned 5 McDonald's, working in his office because my background is in accounting. And proceeded to unravel this thing that my son was in. And it took me quite some time.
Took a lot of years to unravel it, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
So, from what I read in your website, I believe that's where I read it, you visited him weekly.
Yes,
and
every week.
And what prison was that?
Everywhere in North Carolina, just about.
And he ended up in Orange County Correctional, I believe. Okay.
Yes, at his last year, I believe. A year, right? 3 years. 3 years, wow. Yes.
Time goes by.
Yes. But Orange Correctional was the best place out of all the prisons. Tillery, Odom, Eastern, Nash, Brown Creek.
Wow.
Salisbury. There were so many different prisons.
But you stayed with this and with your love and affection and respect for your son this whole time, and now he's out. And
yes.
He's part of Straight Talk Support Group.
Yes, he is.
Okay, so, William, it's your turn. A little bit about whatever you want to talk about, but don't take the whole hour. Get close to the microphone so we can hear you.
It's so much to talk about. It's hard to
a little bit of your life.
It's hard to kind of
prison,
book
and
frame
how you improved yourself from what I read about during your prison life.
Well, going to prison with a natural life sentence was extremely depressing, as you could imagine.
I can imagine.
When I process is where you go to get adjusted and get prepared to start dealing with doing your time. I processed at Central Prison in Raleigh, which is the most secure. The security level is the highest in the land. And in Central Prison, they have this huge wall around the whole prison, and you never see any glimpses of the outside. All you can see is the sky. Mm-hmm. And the energy, the spirit, it was so many people with poor health, no legs, just people dying regularly in one way or another. It was just overwhelming. And then of course, they have death row there. And just knowing that, you have very little contact with the outside world. If you did get visits, it was through a glass. You spoke through a small mesh opening. You used the phone once a year when I was there. So me not being from this state, being cut off so much from having any kind of interaction with my family, that intensified the depression. And in that depression, somehow, some way, I found enough unction to tell my mother at one of our earliest visits that I would rather die than spend the rest of my life as a 21-year-old serving a natural life sentence in such a place. It was that dismal, that decrepit, it was that degrading. And I couldn't look her in the face and tell her that, but I did say that to my own shame and weakness. That's where I was speaking from, and I meant every word of it at the time. And it was through her, somehow she found the strength. I believe it was God who gave her the strength, which was transferred to me to keep my hope, which I had none. Once the judge sentenced me to natural life, my mortality became just that real to me. And when I got to Central Prison and I saw so many sick people, just so many beat up people, for whatever the reason, I felt like I was in a third world country. And when I did get that visit, it wasn't such a happy visit. Getting prepared to go to the visit, it wasn't something I looked forward to, because I had made my mind up that I was going to tell my mother I would rather die somehow, some way, than spend the rest of my life in prison. Now, granted, Central Prison was the only prison that I had been to. Prior to that, I was in Wake County Jail. So my assumption was that, one prison was just like every other prison. Mm-hmm. I didn't know it was variations of prison. But through her, I'm here today because through her, she asked me to promise her that if I found a way to have some hope, she would continue to fight for my freedom. And I didn't know how in the heck she was going to do that, but it worked. She got me to agree to that, and I did, and I'm glad I did. Because through that hope, a lot of things were happening and opening doors, and over a long period of time, I was able to endure until in 2012, I got a letter from the Parole Commission in Raleigh that basically said, hey, we have this program that we scarcely give out. We do this very sparingly, hardly ever. And you may possibly fit the criteria.
You may possibly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Fit the criteria for this program.
There's no promise yet.
Not at all. And we want to interview you. We want to talk to you face to face. And if it goes well, you'll agree to abide by a fixed set of rules for 36 months, which is the 3 years I spent at Orange Correctional.
Oh, okay. So you were still behind bars.
Oh, absolutely.
But you'd had a new life in prison.
Right.
A new prison life.
And I signed an agreement to the contract. I fulfilled my end of the bargain. And on December 21st in 2015, I was released from Orange Correctional, which is a minimal custody facility. Prior to that, every other prison I was at, the custody level was way higher. The security level was way higher.
But you mentioned when we were sitting out in the lobby here that you were in a number of different prisons.
Right.
Why all the movement? Why shift you around?
The nature of prison is pretty much set up in a myriad of ways But one of them being they don't want you to get too comfortable with the ins and outs or the ebb and flow of one particular prison.
And it doesn't sound like it's very comfortable to begin with, at least at Central.
Absolutely, but human nature, you can put on a pair of shoes that are terribly uncomfortable, but if you wear them long enough, you'll figure out how to ball your foot up to find a little bit of comfort.
Okay.
And prison is kind of like that. You go and you hate the place. It's hard, it's cold, it's dismal, but after a while, we are very adaptable. And if you stay at one prison long enough, you get to know who works, who's not working, how the shifts change. Mm-hmm. And if that's your motivation, you'll get to try to figure out how to manipulate that to try to maybe escape. And that does happen. So the idea is to move you around.
So you're a smart enough person to understand how to take care of these possibilities.
Well, a lot of that is born from my street experience. Growing up in New Jersey, and for one reason or another, deciding to get involved with the street life, you learn how to adjust.
Okay.
You learn how to adjust and manage the ebb and flow of all that entails. In the northern inner city, you got.
What city were you living in?
We lived all over: East Orange, Newark, Irvington.
Okay, I lived up in New Jersey too, but
right,
but not in an inner city life.
Right. Yes, and from A to Z, you see so many things going on. You learn how to deal with all types of people and situations. So prison was just a concentration of all of those things.
Okay. Well, so now what's your status now that you're out? Are you free, or are you still on a parole deal?
No, I'm on a 5-year parole.
Is that the thing that they offered you, or is that something different?
That comes with having a first-degree murder charge.
Oh, I see.
When you have that type of charge, when you get released, however you do get released from prison, you have to be on some type of parole monitoring for a period of time. And for me, it's 5 years, which can be abbreviated, never extended, but can be abbreviated.
What's parole like? Who manages you?
Well, you're assigned a parole officer that you report to once a month.
The report office, the parole officer comes to you, or you go to him or her?
For the first 90 days of my release, I had a 7 o'clock curfew. I couldn't leave the house before 7 a.m.
Are you living with your mother?
I'm living with my sister.
Your sister, okay.
Yes. And I couldn't leave the house before 7 a.m., and I had to be home no later than 7 p.m. Mm-hmm. And during those hours where you have to be home, at any time, a parole officer can come to the premises to make sure that you are there. Mm-hmm. Had I happened to not be there, that's equivalent to be charged with escaping from prison. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't notify my parole officer, hey, I had to go to the hospital, I broke my toe, or traffic is really bad, I think I'll be home late, then I'm negligent. And when you have a life sentence, technically, even sitting here with you right now, because I'm on 5 years parole, I'm still serving a life sentence.
I see. Okay.
Which means if I violate parole and go back to prison, I can be there for 10, 15 more years. Because a life sentence is still considered an open-ended sentence.
Okay, so you are very careful.
Oh, absolutely.
And your sister's a good mate as your housekeeper, or whatever you want to call her, your landlady.
Absolutely, my support.
Support, okay, yes, support. Yeah. Well, that counts on this whole thing we're talking about. Okay, well, I'm sure that your story could go on and on and on about many things you did. I understand that you studied in prison and you've got a college degree, or... For me, what I did in prison was totally contrary to what's available to do in prison. I hated prison with a capital H. And prison is saturated with mean-spirited, depressed souls, from the administration to the population. Mm-hmm. And I knew that if I existed in that, if I embraced that, then it would have killed me. And my self-fulfilling prophecy would have panned out. I would have died. Uh-huh. Particularly having such a lengthy sentence. Yeah.
I met umpteen guys who had long sentences, who came there angry, hateful, and mean, and maintained that throughout their sentence, and many of them passed away, or many of them are afflicted with terminal illnesses from bottling up so many toxic, mean-spirited feelings. So being face-to-face and surrounded with guys like that, I decided to take a really risky move and have hope after my mother planted the seed, and continue to stay bright-eyed about prison. So much so, administration sometimes and some of the inmate population, friends that I met, would always tell me and try to remind me, look, man, you really are in prison, and you really do have a natural life sentence, and you might need to start acting like it. But I refused to do that. So the literature I read, my activities that I chose to do in prison were totally contrary to the environment I was in.
But you were able to connect with this other type of environment.
Exactly. I was in prison just enough to clear the count.
Yeah.
And to clear the count means in prison they have several head counts to make sure nobody escaped.
Yeah.
And when they would call them randomly, and just to make sure nobody escaped. And I would be there just enough to hear the count called, assume my position, and once they did the count and the numbers added up, they would say the count is clear. And when the count was clear, as much as I could mentally, I would go wherever I wanted to go in my mind. And I would camouflage a lot of my activities under that scheme because I never wanted to look like I was a potential escape risk.
Wow, what a story. Well, we could continue with this, William, but you'll be talking with your sister and your mother the rest of the show, and your story is quite exceptional. Now, Straight Talk Support Group, what's the structure there? Your turn, Cheryl. She's been sitting here quietly listening to all the story from her brother, which she's already heard.
Yes, and I am an extrovert, so I was working really hard being an introvert. Straight Talk Support Group was created 3 years ago by my mom, Bessie Elmore, and obviously it was directly influenced by my brother William's incarceration, and a suggestion was made to her in 2013, March of 2013, about doing something, about her son and doing something about families that had loved ones that were incarcerated, and she came up with Straight Talk Support Group. And how what my place is, or my position is in the organization, I am the administrative team. I handle mostly the emails that go out to family members. I do reminders for events that go on. I handle the processing of dues and recordings. I also assist with event planning for the organization. And just recently, I started co-facilitating the support group because Straight Talk is growing, and my mom has to go to another Straight Talk support group to help them along. So that's what I'm doing now.
Where's the other one?
It's in Cary, but Cheryl also received a call this weekend, and about inquiring about what we do, because they would like to start a support group out in Indiana.
Fort Wayne, Indiana, at the university.
So, are you kind of the original Straight Talk support group in the country?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow. But there must be other support organizations that help with people who are formerly incarcerated.
Not in North Carolina.
No, is that right?
When I did the Google search, I didn't want to try to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
So I did a Google search first to see if there was such an animal, but not in North Carolina. And the ones that I did find, the Osborne Group in New York, I called them because I wanted to make sure that I was doing something correctly. And they offered me a lot of support. And I contacted different people in different locations and talked to them about what I was doing, and they offered me their support and suggestions on how best to run a support group.
Okay, so you folks think you're running it okay now?
Yes, we are. We've served over 200 people from various times, and we'll be opening September the 12th. Our next chapter will open in Cary. We've also got a call from someone down in Winston-Salem who would like to start a support group. We receive phone calls from all over the United States because family members have loved ones that are incarcerated here in North Carolina. So we have a crisis line where Cheryl and I man that crisis line. So when we get calls, now we're not legal. When I say legal, we're not lawyers.
Oh, okay,
so
sure.
we don't offer legal advice.
Yeah.
But
you can tell people where to get it.
Yes, we are a resource, and we outsource different places for people to get the kind of help that they may need.
We're talking with Bessie and with Cheryl and with William about Straight Talk Support Group. It's a fascinating organization. Your overall mission is to reconnect people who are leaving prison with their families. Is that right?
That's exactly right.
So what's the process? I mean, the physical, the emotional, the financial process.
Well, Bill, when a loved one goes to prison, the family also goes to prison. So what Straight Talk does is Straight Talk provides a safe place for the family to come and discuss what they're feeling with other like-minded people and to learn what they're doing and how they're coping with their loved ones, because they don't know the system. No one really knows the system when a loved one goes to prison because they're not with that person. So what Straight Talk provides is they provide a platform for them to sit and discuss without being judged about their loved one in prison.
So this is done among the families outside in your own world, not in the prison environment.
No, not in the prison environment.
But what does it mean to your incarcerated family person while you are dealing with each other as family people while William's still behind bars and trying to survive his own way?
It encompasses a lot, because when a person comes to Straight Talk, they're able to express what they're feeling with like-minded people. It's easier for them to come to a Straight Talk meeting and say, you know what, I'm really ticked off about how these phone calls, how to travel, how much money I can put on my child's books, how I have to deal with certain issues, and I don't know what to do. I'm frustrated. I don't have another place. My family doesn't understand. My family at church doesn't understand. So they can come to the support group, and they don't feel as though they have to sit in silence, that they can openly express themselves.
Well, you sound like you really are running a well-defined organization, and you created it yourself.
Yes.
I mean, there's no college course that tells about this.
No, it comes from experience.
Well, okay, but during the time that William was in prison, were you dealing with? Well, you weren't organized early.
No,
you
no.
just became organized in 2012.
Right, but in some ways, Cheryl and I already had a support group because we would talk with one another.
Yeah.
But I couldn't understand what she was feeling because that was her brother.
Yeah.
She couldn't understand what I was feeling because I'm his mother.
And there's nothing you can do for him exactly while he's there.
Well, he was my inside guy. Cheryl and I determined that he's in an incubator now, and we're going to provide him with all this material because we believe that one day he would get out of prison.
Absolutely.
And we didn't want him to be so far behind in anything.
Are you thankful for that?
Oh, absolutely. That's the manifestation of my ability to be present right here today. And you said something, Mr. Bill, about there being no college course or curriculum to kind of teach somebody about what we do. Mm-hmm. And I'm coming to find more and more that there are no college courses to deal with real life, as real life happens anyway. And
that's a good observation.
And their support, which was in certain places it was the same, and in other respects it was uniquely different. I didn't anticipate any support when I had gone rogue, so to speak, around the age of 13 or 14. Uh-huh. When I got into the streets, I kind of disconnected myself slowly but surely from my family, and I was doing my own thing.
Did you get influenced by a lot of your other buddies?
No, I influenced all of my buddies.
Oh, you were the leader.
I didn't. Nobody influenced.
You were the
me.
head rogue.
Yeah, I was the head rogue, and I kind of made rogue stylish, unfortunately, to my chagrin. And Straight Talk is just another medium that I can use to kind of, right my wrongs, and because I'm very contrite about a lot of things. But when I came to prison, being all the way down here in North Carolina, not knowing anyone at all, my sister being in New Jersey, my mother being in Stone Mountain, Georgia, I anticipated doing this solo, alone, on my own.
Yeah.
And yeah, Mom came to the trial, my sister came to the trial, and after I got found guilty, in my mind, I had resigned myself to, being a lone wolf. And the support I got was unprecedented, unanticipated. And they just kept showing up. And time kept going on, and they just kept showing up. And literature just kept coming. Literature, some I asked for, some I didn't. Whatever they felt inspired to do, we all were scrambling, trying to figure out.
We all.
Yeah, me, my mother,
family?
and my sister.
Okay,
trying to figure out how to deal with this from one day to the next, one visit to the next, because there was no blueprint. And as every time we found out something, we shared it with each other, and we went to work on it. And it was small and incremental steps, but our love for each other as a family and our commitment. My mother used to say that we were like the Three Musketeers. And I thought that was so corny, but I knew in the spirit of it, I knew exactly what she meant. And despite me being here, my sister being there, and my mother being somewhere else, we came together like the cartoon Voltron or the Transformers. When something happened, everything kind of stopped, and we came on one accord to address it. And when I came to prison, more of the same, even though I didn't anticipate it, because this was a big deal. I'm in North Carolina. I have a natural life sentence.
Yeah,
they have lives.
You still have it.
Yeah, I still have it, and they still right here.
Yeah,
nobody has missed a beat.
Yeah, okay. So it all started. You kind of evolved, as I've used that phrase a lot here, because that's what the whole thing is, an evolution, and it's still evolving.
Yes, absolutely.
You say you have a new chapter now. When you start a new chapter in Cary, who's going to run it? You can't run everything.
No.
I mean, maybe you're talented, Bessie, but
no, I haven't cloned myself yet. There's another woman who is a member of Straight Talk who is going to be the facilitator. We have a training manual. We develop a training manual, and we have a facilitator agreement in that manual. We want every support group that's open to basically be run the exact same way. Mm-hmm. So that's why we have a training manual to do just that.
That's a good idea, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So you put that together yourselves?
Yes.
Okay. And are you going to kind of market yourself nationally? You say you've got an inquiry from Indiana. You got something started in Cary. Did you start the one in Cary, or did they come to you? Or?
They came to us.
Okay.
And that's how most people find us. They're on Google and they're looking for a support group that supports family members who have loved ones that are incarcerated. And that's how they find us. And they will call us and they will inquire. And we had a support group in Rocky Mount, but it was not supported in the way it wasn't marketed, and we had to close that chapter. But we will be reopening that chapter
in Rocky Mount. So you say how do you advertise?
We have a brochure, and we've done fundraisers. We did a fundraiser 2 years ago. We showed a movie titled "The Middle of Nowhere" by Ava DuVernay.
Okay.
And basically, no one heard of her until the movie Selma came out.
Okay.
And then everybody knew who she was. Uh-huh. So if we had just waited a little while, then the movie would have been supported, more. But the movie's entitled "Middle of Nowhere," and it's about a family who has a loved one that's incarcerated.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, William, you're part of this organization now, but you're still serving your life sentence. What can he do to help with this process? You can't go traveling around. You got to stay right here, don't you?
Well, I can. Long as I consult with my parole officer is totally on board with
it is
things that I'm interested in. Along with being on the board and being a resource and a sense of insight for Straight Talk, I'm also the outreach coordinator and volunteer coordinator for Reintegration Support Network for community youth recovering from drug addiction. So, in saying all
Are
of
you
that,
recovering from drug addiction?
no, not at all.
Because when you were a youth in the streets, you weren't in the drug world.
Yeah, I was in a drug world, but not as a user.
But not as a user.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. So, but I've been under the influence of life itself, which sometimes I don't think is not much difference. But I've never used any drugs or drank any alcohol or anything like that. But right now, I'm employed based out of Chapel Hill with this organization that we build circles of support around youth that are in recovery. And Straight Talk was always in effect. It wasn't structured. It wasn't formatted yet. All my life, I've been sending people that I couldn't help to my mother in one way or another. Yeah, I met so many guys, umpteen guys, that didn't have a voice, didn't have resources, but wanted them and needed them. And I saw glimpses of myself in that. And I would say, hold on a second. When I call home, I'll have my mother check on that stuff that was way out of her reach.
So you're the rogue chaplain.
Yeah, more or less. I assumed so many different positions that were needed, that I needed myself. And I, to the best of my ability, I kind of became that to other guys, and we came that to ourselves collectively. And doing that often enough, and my mother was inspired to go ahead and, structure it and put it together so it could be something formal and something legitimate. And that's what you see. That's
Okay.
a part of it that you see as we speak.
It's 5:32 p.m. in Carrboro, North Carolina. You're listening to WCOM. This is the local community station. We serve Carrboro and Chapel Hill at 103.5. We serve the world on WCOMFM.org. We are supported by people and businesses in this community and elsewhere. And you can underwrite this show, or you can underwrite any show you wish, or you can go to our website, WCOMFM.org, and make a safe and secure donation, or you can come by here. We are located at 300 East Main Street in Carrboro, a glass building attached to the front of the famous Carrboro Art Center. You can slip an envelope with a check under the door, and somebody will give you credit for it, and you can make sure you can take your deduction, because we are a full-fledged nonprofit organization. And as a nonprofit and full-fledged and lucky organization, we can talk with people like Bessie and Cheryl and William about things that are making me very, very impressed with what you all are doing. And I can see it becoming a major factor in your lives and other lives. Now, how are you getting you got to have some support. You got to pay for all this stuff. How do people reach you?
They can go to the website. We have a donate page.
Okay.
That they can donate. We are a 501c3. And I'm very happy about that. Right now, we have gotten funding from the Men's Council in Chapel Hill. They've supported one of our programs, and we do get monies in from various people. We're in the process now of looking for some grants. We do have a grant writer. We also have a marketing team to help us because bills have to be paid. And right now, our members do pay $7 a month. That helps with our meeting room. But the money shows up. I support the organization.
So you have where's your meeting room?
We meet in Durham at 3500 Westgate Drive in Suite 504.
So you have rented this room?
Yes.
So is that really your headquarters?
Yes.
Okay, so if anybody wants to see you, and you have a phone and all the usual business type stuff. Okay.
Yes, we do.
Now, you both have other employment, or
yes,
both you ladies?
Yes, I work for Durham Tech.
Okay.
In Durham, I teach job readiness classes.
You teach what?
Job readiness
classes.
Wow,
okay.
And resume writing.
And you?
I currently work for the city of Durham. I'm an executive assistant for neighborhood improvement services.
Wow, somebody's calling us. We'll see what they want, if they are, or we should pick them on the phone. We'll see what happens here. Hello, you're talking to WCOM. Who's calling, please? Hello. I don't hear anybody. Well, I guess they're not there. You never know when you're going to get a phone call, and sometimes nobody's there like that. But I pushed the right button and everything organized here. No, I don't have that button pushed. Maybe I didn't push that button. Well, maybe they'll call again. Okay. William, now, what kind of life do you propose for yourself as you develop your civilian life?
Well, once again, while I was in prison, the idea is imposed on those of us that live in prison is the number one, get all the education you can get, take all the vocational classes, get all the job ready, marketable skills.
Yeah, okay.
So when you do get released, if you do get released, you'll be able to get a job and make some money. I'm an outlier in the way I think. I totally abandoned all of that thinking. I did my hardest work working on myself, mentally and spiritually, because I knew that if I didn't change the way that I thought about things, I could have gotten right out of prison, or while I was in prison, and continued to sell drugs. So the work that I did, it didn't go down on paper. I didn't get a certificate. I didn't attend a graduation. I didn't get a cupcake and a hand clap or give a speech about it. I did a lot of my work internally. Out of the 24 and a half years while I was in prison, I was afforded the luxury of a single cell, meaning I had a room with a door that I could close pretty much when I wanted.
Wow.
And while I was in that cell mentally, along with a lot of the literature my mother sent me, that would become my kitchen, my living room, my sanctuary, my dojo, my park, my waterfall, etc.
So you kept flooding him with stuff.
Yes, he was in the incubator. Cheryl and I decided that we were going to send him books from poetry to politics to everything, because he had all of this time. He was not going to be like the pictures you see on TV with the guys pumping iron and playing cards. So we were going to send him to stuff to educate him. We started sending him when the Computers for Dummies came out, because we figured he'll know something about a computer. We kept
Did you have a computer?
updated.
Did you have
Not at all.
Laptop?
The prison system in North Carolina was like Fred Flintstone. It was very, very rudimentary, very archaic. You don't have access to any form of technology besides the AM/FM transistor radio. You didn't have no laptop, no internet, none of that.
So you decided what you wanted him to read.
Yes, we decided.
Okay,
Yeah,
And what we did is William has an inquisitive mind. He always has. When he was a kid, he always wanted to know the ins and outs of everything.
That's what got you in trouble, probably.
Yeah, perhaps to some extent. You're exactly right.
So we knew what we thought we knew, or we decided that, well, you know what, he might be interested in this, or he might be interested in that, or if he reads this book, then maybe he can choose the next book.
Mm-hmm. Right. So we had our own book club before Oprah had her book club.
Okay.
And people would want to know, what are you guys talking about at Visit? You're always so engaged when you're at Visit. You're always talking. And it was surprising to me, because first, we've never had a prison experience, so we did not know what do you do at Visit but talk about interesting stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's what we did.
Well, it worked. And you just soaked all that stuff up.
And again, I mean, that's the easy answer, that it worked. But so much of prison is predicated on the individual's approach. Because, again, I mean, I know several guys who have taken all of the correspondence courses, UNC, universities around the country, gained degrees, vocations, and how to build that keyboard, that machine that you're working right there. But because the mentality hadn't changed, they got out of prison, right? Were very marketable, and a year or two later, or even less than that, they came right back to prison and sat right back beside me. And I would say, how did that happen? I don't understand it. And they would say, give me different reasons of why. My point in even bringing that up is that you have to liberate yourself mentally before you do it any other way. Because you can pack on all of this education and this technical knowledge about this or that and leave prison, but if you haven't changed internally, you're more susceptible to return to the activities that led you back to prison. And I know that for a fact.
So you feel very comfortable with yourself?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
And if I was not very comfortable with myself, I would give my sister and my mother the biggest hugs I could, because I know that I'm still pointing or facing in the direction of prison, which is to me almost the equivalent of no different than slavery, because the mentality is to keep you dead in your head in prison.
Right.
It's sold commercially as a place where a man can come to himself and he can get books in and he can read and study and he can really sharpen his sword.
Yeah.
But prison does not endorse or encourage that. It's because of certain constitutional rights they allow you to get literature in. But the idea is to work you while you are able so prison can profit. That's the nature of the beast.
Right. Yeah. A lot of prisons are run by outside businesses.
You better
Exactly.
believe it is.
Exactly.
It's not a joke. It's not something people say. You're talking to somebody who has 24 and a half day-to-day experience in prison. And I wish that weren't the case, but that's literally what prison is about. If you're able and you qualify with a health grade, you are to work. Mm-hmm. It's 105 degrees outside today, they say, but guess where you're going?
You're going
outside to work.
Pick up stuff on the highway.
Yes.
It's definitely a business.
It's a business.
Yeah, yeah. And so the people that run the prisons are making a profit on your work.
Yeah, somebody somewhere is making a profit on the work.
Yeah.
And the people who work in the prison, they don't have a voice to say, it's too hot outside. I wouldn't want to send them out there today.
Okay, so I understand that. In fact, you have a long story. You probably could do a lot of public speaking on the things you're just talking about right now if you want to. I mean, you folks have so many avenues you can go to. You kind of have to control yourself.
Right, but I would be remiss to not speak about Department of Public Safety.
Okay. That's the state-run Department of Public Safety.
Yes. At first, I hated everything about North Carolina. Everything. The license plate, the sign that says, "Welcome to North Carolina," everything. But I made friends with so many people at the Department of Public Safety that enabled me to do so many different things, so that hatred I had turned into a love affair that I have with North Carolina.
So tell me, how did that evolve? This is part of the evolution we talked about. You hated them, but what makes them so cooperative with people like you?
Well, I'm not going to say. Well, I can't say what it was or what it wasn't, but some doors were open for me because of my relationship. I've worked in the reentry since it started for over 20 years, talking about reentry. During the whole time I was working on my son's situation, I got involved in learning about the system. So let me learn about it so I can understand it and see how I can turn it around. Not just for my son, but for other people.
And can I interject this, Mom, along with that? Because the same evolution that she was going through on the outside, I was experiencing in an identical way on the inside. Once she committed to doing all it took for me, that energy was expressed in a way where people started to respond to it. And because she was diligent and consistent and persistent, then people started to compliment it in a sense, because they knew that she wasn't a fly-by-night or some phase and she wasn't just going away. On my end of things, because of the route that I took in prison, which was not popular and which made a lot of enemies, but because of my persistence and my diligence, if the administration began to, without compromising the rules of the prison, they began to compliment my path.
In other words, they didn't like you originally trying to research and rebuild your own life? They weren't happy with that?
No, because the whole idea is you're in prison. what's the point? And you have this, remember, you have this natural life sentence. You're never getting out.
And you're a profit item to them.
What's the point for you to not work? Because we threaten you if you don't work. Mm-hmm. What's the point for you to not work and try to read these books on computers? You're never going to see one. Why are you reading any books about something that me going on in Africa or China? You're never going to go there or see those things unless it's on TV. So what are you doing? You're wasting your time. Why don't you be like everybody else, put your boots on, go out there and work, and come in, get you a shower, and watch the ball game? Why you don't want to comply? Mm-hmm. That was the idea. Mm-hmm. But being persistent and consistent and being tactful about it, because as my mother says, when you have your hand in the lion's mouth, you need to be very careful how you pull it out.
That's
so
right.
I didn't want to make any enemies, because my enemies would have became their enemies.
Sure.
And sometimes that's the stance you need to take to get results. And by God's grace is who I give the most credit to. By way of that, I'm sitting here with my family, free enough to be able to do this radio interview.
And the whole idea is that other people will be sitting with their families in the future, talking like William and like you are talking
That's
together.
what it's all about. It's just not about us.
Yeah.
It's about those other families.
Well, now you have a long life ahead, William. You're going to... You don't really know what it's going to lead to as far as activity yet, I guess.
You mean...
Because you're still under the gun.
Well... In a sense, I am, but once you died and been resurrected, I mean, everything else kind of pales in comparison.
Yeah.
I mean, being on 5 years parole and technically on paper still serving a life sentence, it doesn't compare to being behind a prison wall serving a life sentence. So I'm never going to say that. It's not even relatable. However, I'm aware of it, and it keeps me honest, and that's a good thing. But my life is a day-to-day process. I've been going, like I said, 24 and a half years, and the world is so different. People are different. Mm-hmm. They interact differently. Cars are different. Telephones are different. And for me, the key is to continue to take my time to get reacclimated. Everybody's in a rush, and I don't want to be. So just like when I was in prison, I'm an outlier once again because I choose to take a different path. I call it a Zen-like path because my peace of mind has to precede anything else that I do. If I find myself in the lane of the world, at the pace of the world, I'm manic. I need a cup of coffee. I need a cigarette. I need everything everybody else need to cope. And I don't want to live like that. Mm-hmm. So I want to take my time and live my life in a way where my mindset is peaceful and not static.
You're going to have to cooperate and work along with your sister and your mother too.
Absolutely.
And whether you're going to be part of Straight Talk support group down the road or do something else to satisfy your own desires and your own talent.
Yeah, and it's a balancing act. So the balancing of it all comes in when I take my respites, and which I do often, to gather myself and center myself. I know so many guys who have done just as much time, if not more, than myself, who are out now and struggling from day to day, treading water to keep from drowning, because there's so much pressure on you to assimilate with the pace of the world as it is today. You bombarded with information, with motivation, with the push and pull and the ebb and flow of today's life. And because I did so much internal work while in prison to maintain my balance, that spills over into my day-to-day now as a free person. Mm-hmm. Because without that work that I chose to do, despite it being antithetical to the nature of prison, I would be just as rattled and topsy-turvy and stumbling around like everybody else appears to be to me. And I refuse to allow anybody to pull me faster than I want to go. That's not a popular path to take, but that's the one I do take.
Well, do you ladies go along with what he's saying about himself? Sister?
Well, these past 7 months they've been really good, but I'm trying to be careful with William because I definitely want to be a support to him, but I notice things, like he says, he's not going to be rushed and he's not going to be rattled, so I try to observe that and I try to yield to it for him because I know that that's what he needs. So I try to observe as much as I can and try to be as supportive as I can for him. So I really, really watch and learn.
Well, 24 and a half years in one environment is just a huge number of years and conditions that make your life different. And come back and be a civilian.
Yeah.
I can't really focus on your mind and your emotions that you have gone through, and none of us can. Even your sisters who you live with.
Now, mom is and my sister are my mirrors, even though they don't know what's going on internally. I trust that they'll be honest enough to tell me what they perceive, and that's great. That's great feedback that I need and that I honor. And mom, I don't mean to take the microphone from mom, because she was answering a question before I was inspired to interject something, but they're always concerned about my state of mind, about everything, and that's healthy because prison is stressful.
Sure,
It's like no different than going out. Not to minimize anybody who's been in any kind of war, combat. Prison is a psychological war,
sure.
and I haven't had to break for Christmas and Thanksgiving to come home to my family. I did it straight, 24 and a half, no breaks, and I imagine that there's a lot of decompression that I need to do daily, and I beg people to understand that. But when they don't, I try not to hold it against them, because if you haven't lived it, what is it to you?
And you probably won't ever totally decompress.
It's a process.
Yeah, and 24 and a half years is they just made it different. They just built you as another creature.
Right. But sometimes it feels like we went to sleep. We just went to sleep and we woke up. It was all like a dream.
Yes.
It's in many ways, but the reality, of course, it's not a dream. It actually happened. The way I can phrase it is going to see a movie. You've seen the premieres, you've seen all the advertisement, and you go in and you say, okay, I'm going to see this movie. And you're walking out of the movie and you say, you know what, that was a great movie. The ending was phenomenal. But we are the movie.
Yeah. Okay.
We are.
Well, it's a great story. I don't see how you can do anything but become a mission group nationally for what you're doing here. I mean,
You're correct, Bill. You are correct, because one of the things that Straight Talk's goal is that there is 100 counties in North Carolina, and Straight Talk plans to be in 100 counties because there's 100 jails. And I mean, I don't know how many prisons there are right now currently active in North Carolina, but 100 jails, Straight Talk is going to be there because it's needed.
A friend of mine was in the Orange County jail a couple of years ago, and he came out and he told me, and he was only there for a short time, but he said there was one guy in jail with him that's been there for like a year in a jail, in a small county jail.
Yeah, I heard of guys being in the jail for 3 years. I was just thinking about, you said it's 100 county?
100
Yeah.
counties.
So, in other words, what we're going to do with Straight Talk is, as they say now, we're going to keep it 100.
Okay.
That means keep it real, in other words. And Orange
it's a
County,
great-
I will say this, Bill, about Orange County. I did my last 3 years there, and Orange County was the greatest example of community support that I've seen demonstrated at any prison. I've been to about 11 prisons, even went to Texas. I don't know how my mother overlooks that, but at Hillsborough, Orange County,
Yeah.
the community support, the Yoke Fellows,
Yeah.
the people who come into the institution that interact with us residents and treat us like human beings, that's the greatest contribution to any kind of reintegration, to any kind of reassessment, to any kind of reacclimating to society that's available. Because when we're treated like human beings, as opposed to being treated as a number or a commodity, those things are way more nurturing for the individual than anything that I've ever seen in my 2.5
Well, that's good to say,
decades
because
in prison.
as I told you, I went to some of the Yoke Fellow things, and we just all sat around and talked. I didn't, even though they were wearing their garb, it just like seemed they were next door neighbors.
It's monumental.
Yeah.
I encourage you to get back there if you can and if you will, because just talking to a stranger, shaking their hand and saying, "How are you?" Guys I know personally, man, that does way more than anything you probably could imagine.
Well, this has been a great conversation with you guys, and I hope that we can keep in touch and over the years ahead. And I'm glad you've been to WCOM twice. Maybe I can have you. We have a Sunday morning community class in my church, First Presbyterian Church in downtown Durham. And sometimes we have organizations like you guys, and I'll if you'd want to be recommended, I'll recommend you as a Sunday morning class. Okay. Next week we are going to be talking with a whole different story. We're talking with Andy Widmark. Andy is a native of New Jersey. You know Andy?
Yeah, we do. My husband knows him personally.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, well, Andy's got his business.
Wow.
Great. I'm glad this is amazing. He's got Mark Properties, and he owns shopping centers all over the country. He's done a lot of renovating buildings on Main Street in Durham.
That's right.
And he's a great guy. I have a lot of fun with him when I see him at events that I go to through my church. So he's going to be. So you guys tune in next week.
Yes, absolutely.
So your husband knows him.
He was actually a landlord for him.
Oh, is that right?
Or he managed properties.
Was Andy a decent property person?
I believe he was.
Half
yes.
man, half amazing, Andy.
I would also like to thank the Triangle Association of Health Underwriters. They are an underwriter of this show. They help people find their way through the struggles of finding insurance under the latest changes in Obamacare, which happen periodically. I'd also like to thank retired Ambassador Mike Cotter. Mike has been on the show maybe 10 or 11 times. He's a retired Foreign Service officer, been in the Foreign Service his entire life. He's retired now. He ended up his career as an ambassador. And he's a terrific guest on the show, and he's an underwriter of the show. And I also would like to thank a local person who says she will underwrite community radio until the end of time, and that's down the road a wise, the end of time. L.A. Bachelor usually comes on now, but L.A. sent a note around today that he can't do his show tonight, so I don't know what's going on after we leave, and we're going to leave in about 1 minute. But I'd like to say again to you guys, Bessie and Cheryl and William, it's been great getting to know you. I feel like I really do know you. And I'll see you again, I'm sure.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
And the show's been recorded, so I'll let you know when it's on the podcast of the station. You can listen to it or pass it around, whatever you want to do with it.
Okay,
that would be great.
Thank you.
So that's all, folks. We'll talk to you next week with Andy Widmark.